Sure. In terms of the alternate use and disposal, things are tracking along quite well. We've undertaken a very comprehensive process of consultation with Tangata Whenua, which is formed part of a broader water consultation process that has been carried out. And we have received a draft statement on the outcomes with a final report to be received at a later stage. We have also commissioned an overall stakeholder engagement plan, something designed to make sure we reach everyone that needs to be reached in terms of alternate use and disposal, which has also been included in your documentation. We initially did a stock take of what is happening in New Zealand around alternate use and disposal. That report was provided in the previous WMC meeting. We have now asked for that to be augmented with more information on water quality and what crops they are used on, and also to look at successful business models elsewhere in the world. The Provincial Growth Fund application has been submitted. So if you've looked at that, it's quite a comprehensive application. And we haven't heard back yet from the PDU, but hopefully we will get a response soon. If we don't, we will be chasing up with them anyway to see how it is going and to see if they need any additional information. We've produced a draft project plan for progressing the alternate disposal of mortuary wastewater, and that's also in your document. And in terms of alternate use and disposal, and looking at the alternate disposal of wastewater at Te Karaka, at that wastewater plant, through the Maori Compass training that we've been doing, we've been looking at what that would look like and the changes due to various options to improve that treatment system from a Mātauranga Maori approach. And the Maori Compass, I've written, has been finalized. It's been put into a document now with some added functionality added to it. And we will be providing a presentation on that today. Thank you.
Any questions, Will?
Just on page 108, we've got a report from Indigenous Corporation Solutions, and it mentioned about a hui on the 26th of July. And then there's no mention of any outcomes of that hui. And I'm just wondering if there's any more information that has come out of that. That was held on the 26th of July.
I'm not sure which specific meeting it was. I did attend about 5 meetings. And we'll have more information when the final report comes in, if that's okay.
Right. When will that final report be coming through?
It's due to be completed in October.
Okay, for the next October meeting.
Yes. Thank you.
Just like to thank the staff. This whole report, is nearly 115 pages, and there's some really good information in there. And it's also got the Chamber's report in there, and also the Activate Tarawhiti one with all the different references to what's happening around the world, the use of recycled wastewater. It's a really, really comprehensive report. So I just want to congratulate staff on it, because anybody that doesn't know anything of what this committee is doing would read that, and they really know what as far as the alternative use and disposal, which my personal view is that we need to really move on this as fast as possible. It's very comprehensive, so it's very informative, and congratulations.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just wondering, with regard to the draft project plan for the alternative use and disposal and the mortuary waste, I'm just concerned that the handling of the mortuary waste is going to progress at the same rate as the alternative use and disposal, and my understanding is that it actually be progressed a lot quicker than if it's tagged on to the bigger project, and it'd be nice to see what progress, because from my understanding of it, and it's a pretty simple understanding, it's a relatively straightforward process. There's a site identified. It'd be nice to be able to reassure people that the effects of that mortuary waste are going to be sort of sorted sooner rather than later.
So thank you, through the chair. Yes, we are progressing at its own pace, not at the pace of other AED work. In that project plan, there is a draft timeline, and we are pretty much going to be moving as fast as we can in terms of a bylaw process. The proposed approach is to change the industrial and trade bylaw, and that takes a certain amount of time. So that sets our course. And in the project plan, we've got the bits and pieces of work that we need to get us to that, to amending that bylaw to be able to do this. The technical aspects, as you say, Leroy, are well advanced. Those are going to be progressing in parallel to the bylaw process, and some of that information will inform the bylaw process.
Further questions of Wolf? Yes, Shannon.
Thank you. Yes, I was quite happy to see that there was finally some timeframes around that separation of mortuary waste. It's the first time we've had some dates assigned, which is certainly progress. I think for me, this entire report really highlights our best way forward for water security in this region. Without question, every time I see the figures around the quantity of water that we're wasting currently, it makes the other projects that may form part of our water security insignificant. If we can get this over the line, then this is the way forward for a much larger portion of our of the Poverty Bay Flats here, and the potential for a successful business case has been really well highlighted in the Chamber of Commerce piece as well. So it seems to me that with the partnership and, as you say, your stakeholder engagement, we've got a really strong case to move this forward and to fund a infrastructure project around this. So I'm really happy to see the detail in the report, and I'm really excited about what we do in the next step.
Further questions? Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Wolfgang, in your report, in paragraphs 27, 28, you refer to the Kiwa Group. Are they involved in developing the draft AUD plan?
Which page?
Para 27, 28. Page 17.
They are included in the project plan.
Planning. In the planning process.
They are part of the project plan at the moment. In terms of the planning, the setting up the project plan, that has been GDC only at this stage.
Considering their advisory to the AUD, would it not be appropriate to have a discussion with them about drafting this plan?
Yes, through the chair. So this is the draft plan, and we'll take it through the Kiwa Group.
Thank you.
Councillor.
I want to go through the questionnaire on page 118 that industry has been asked, and on every page it's got recycled wastewater. Now, what is the difference between recycled water and recycled wastewater? Is there a difference? Because at the end of the day, we know it's wastewater, but do we need to keep on saying that all the time? Why aren't we just saying recycled water? Because recycled water is probably, in most people's minds, it's recycled water. Where it comes from is irrelevant. So is there any reason why we keep on using recycled wastewater? It's just, it adds to the perception.
Through the chair, very valid point, Harry. And I think we should be referring it to as recycled water. I agree with you.
So will that be in changes in the future then? Is that, if it's a possibility? It's not misconception, it's just,
There's no longer wastewater.
well, when does wastewater become recycled water and vice versa, you know? I mean, it's all about the perception.
Through the chair, it's a very, very valid point, and I think in terms of engagement, we should be starting from a point of recycled water. Because what is the water after we've treated it? Is it still wastewater? Those are the questions we need to ask and deal with in the engagement process, and talk about recycled water.
Just a question on the maps. Oh, sorry, Ron.
Just want to comment on Larry's point, Mr. Chief. So from a iwi Māori perspective, there's various states of water, right? So we have to be very clear on what state we're talking about. So I understand the perception and the marketing point of how we term it, but when we move through Māori, the state of the water is a very clear, distinct phase that we can't forget.
That's what you're saying, Shannon.
Just on the maps on starting page 39, I'm just wondering, the growth area is defined as a very solid boundary there. Is that a topography thing? Is that a catchment area? I just wondered why it's got such a hard boundary for these maps.
Page 39.
Yep, page 39, and like all of the maps in this attachment,
Yep.
are basically have an outlined growth area, and I'm just wondering why it's not.
Through the chair, we delineated that according to the flat arable land that was outside of the Makori aquifer area. It doesn't have to be. It can be further if one can pump it further. We had to draw a line somewhere, and that was the reason.
That's fine. Thank you.
Further questions? Yes, Leroy.
Not so much a question, but it's I've been reading, and I understand that and I'm sure there's some experts here who might correct me, that at its purest, at its most basic form, oxidane is what we're looking to produce at the end of this recycling process. So if we suggest that we're producing oxidane, which we might introduce into water, being it's the same thing, because it's trying to be recognise that there are various states of water, and that may go some way towards sort of rolling out this discussion about whether it's recycled water, recycled wastewater, repurposed, whatever. But I guess essentially what we're looking to produce is oxidane, which is NOAA, if you like, which is just a chemical composition which happens to be the same as water. Anyway,
Thank you
that's
for
my
that.
5 cents worth.
No further questions? Someone moves to page 14 and move the recommendations, please.
Sorry, can I just ask a couple of questions? One as a stakeholder. One of the co-drivers for change is public health. That suggests that actually public health should have a seat at the table, not be subsumed within an advisory function as part of the technical advisory group. This was recognised in the original consent that the Medical Officer of Health was a party to, and specified by the original consent in 2007. So I think there's that level that that is a component. It overlaps. It's not independent. It overlaps. So I think that should be in there as of right. But you also have a legal obligation to put it in there because of the role of the Medical Officer of Health, such that they exist. That would be my main commentary about it, to ensure that that isn't subsumed somewhere in the, because the technical advisory group was set up for a specific purpose, and much of the expertise around the table you'll need but not through the technical advisory group, but through the individuals, as you've already have through Murray and others. Sure.
Do you now have a supplementary question?
I was going to, it's more a comment about the nature of the terminology about whether the water is recycled. One of the things that over the years that I've been involved has been trying to avoid the simplification, because simplifying terms carries a risk, which is that it becomes easy to ignore the reality that what we've been seeking to achieve is a transformation by transformation of the water, so that we can restore its mode, or at least improve its mode, and that the various components of recycled water come from different sources, and they will have different mode and different components, and they may require different processes before they can become a generic. But I appreciate that. And one of the other things that we've reflected over the years is that we've sort of toed and froed versus how pure water needs to be reused, and that's something that we've looked at around the table on a number of occasions, that it isn't just a matter of taking the water, putting all of the water to the same standard. There's actually a number of uses for recycled water, whatever its source, and some of those reuses derive benefit from the water not being completely pure, because there's actually components, there's resources, there's energy values in there. So, but it does depend on the destination, and that's so. It's just a comment about, I understand the need to simplify the language so it's easy to understand, but I would hate to lose some of the complexities that we've addressed over the years. Sure.
Through the chair, if I may just assure Dr. Duncan that the health is being considered, and the Department of Health will be included all the way through.
Thank you, Chair. And yes, Bruce brought up 2 points, and Wolfgang summarised the point that I was wanting to talk to. I mean, Tangata Whenua support Bruce's participation at the table. There's no doubt, there's no question of his expertise and what he brings to the table. But I would want to query the place of the public health in further forums going forward. I would need to see the legality part. And then my worry is a lot of the personnel around the table here go through quite a strenuous process of being critiqued every time we do something. And you're definitely accepted at this table, but there may be some other members who come to this table who I don't believe have the backing or the support of what I would feel that the public health unit should display. Not wanting to use the R word, but it is an institution that Māori have problems with as well. Thank you.
Councillor.
One more query, actually. When we talk about international standards, and we see here about the usage of wastewater throughout the world as an A, B, and C, and so on, is that an international standard? Is it, you know, to reach the A quality for irrigation on vegetables and other related crops, and then the B quality for you know, fruit and citrus? Is that an international standard of quality? You know, to achieve that certain A level and B level and C level?
I believe it's an Australian standard, the one that I've quoted in the documentation. I doubt it changes very much if you go internationally, but I'll put it onto my to-do list to find out.
Just see that in the States, they use B, where Australia uses it as an A, and there's a bit of a difference in opinion of what the usage should be in the different countries. That's all. So yeah, clarification on that would be good.
A complex subject, isn't it? Are there any further questions? If not, yes.
Mr. Chair, I'm just on the PGF application. So do you have any indications in terms of timeframes?
We had hoped to have heard something from them by today, but they haven't responded yet, so I will be following up with them to see where it is in the process. With PGF applications, there's no, it's difficult to know when you're going to get a response and get it sorted out. Some take longer, some are quite quick. But we'll follow up with them to see where it is in the process.
I'm sure our chairman had a word to the PM the other night, but my other concern, Mr. Chair, is hopefully the AED plan isn't just about the PGF application and what's proposed in there. So we have a tendency to have our one-site approach to things, and Bruce and the WireTech team done a lot of work around other things. I just hope we don't forget these other options for us to consider.
No further questions? Someone move the recommendations on page. Thank you. Seconder, put that to the table. All those in favour, please say aye. The contrary, carried. Page 128. Wastewater treatment plant upgrade update. You're in the hot seat again, Wolf. All day.
Through the chair, the processes associated with upgrading the wastewater treatment plant are going as planned, as per the timeline that council approved in February. We will be appointing a project manager to oversee this work. So it's a dedicated project manager. So we have someone that is specifically committed to making sure it happens on time and within budget. And that procurement is out at the moment. Our engineers that helped us through the scoping process, which was Becca, have also undertaken all the enabling works that were required to get the design going, and they completed their work. They have also been successful in being awarded the contract for the upgrade to do the design work. It was a competitive process and they won that tender. So there'll be some continuity there too. And we had our first workshop with them this week. We had what we call a site camp, where they were here for the whole week. They're still here at the moment. And we were looking at everything, looking where we can make wins, where we can save money and get the process going. So the design is tracking along as required, and they are looking for opportunities also to deliver ahead of time. Difficult to do, but we are trying to find those opportunities. As part of this process, we also need to look at designations at the site and designate the land for wastewater treatment purposes. We have opted to expand onto an adjacent site, and so because it makes sense in terms of layout and budgets, and we have proceeded with the process of putting together the designation documents so we can run that through the processes to get it designated so construction can commence there when we're ready. At the same time, there are some other consent processes. These are not consents related to the existing consent. These are consents required to enable us to construct the land use consents. And that also has been progressed and is on track. At the previous WMC meeting, the committee asked for further information on clarification and UV disinfection, which we have provided in this document also. Thank you.
Any questions, Wolf? Yes, Ronald.
Wolf, the current existing consent, So it's good to hear that Becca seems to be comfortable that they'll get it up earlier than expected. Our previous advice was we would be outside the existing consent. Has that changed?
So Becca has not confirmed that they can complete it ahead of the schedule, but they're looking for opportunities to do that. And that's been our direction to them to look for those opportunities because we want to implement it as soon as possible. But at this stage, there's no guarantee that's going to happen. I just want to make that clear, Ronald. The second question was?
So our existing consent, previous advice was that we would be outside that timeframe. So is there, based on that conversation, obviously they're not guaranteeing it, but is there an opportunity for us to actually meet the consent condition?
Through the chair, we're working with Becca to see if we can meet the consent condition. Becca have identified some ways that we can speed up the process, which of course we're pushing very hard for. So we're looking to see how we can align and run some things in parallel to make sure that we can hit the consent timeframes that we have in front of us. We're unsure at this stage if all of the identified time savings will work for us, but we'll come back at a later committee to see how close we're going to be to hitting our consent timeframes.
Adding to that, what's the consequences if we don't?
Through the chair, the consequences will be that we'll be in breach of our resource consent timeframes. It'll be whether or not we're able to seek an amendment. We'll know within the next few months as to whether or not we'll be able to hit our timeframes and whether or not they're realistic. If not, we would have to seek an amendment to the consent of a couple of months to make sure that we can hit the timeframes that we need to. But we won't know that until we've worked through better timetabling and seeing the availability. A lot of it comes down to the availability of getting the large componentry from overseas and the timeframes from getting it from once we order.
Further questions? Shannon?
Yeah, I guess my question is just on that last statement. If the delay in ordering equipment is solely on completing detailed design, I assume, but that's not reliant on any of our consent conditions or changes of designation or any of that kind of thing. So it seems like if that's the largest possible holdup, then that focus could be easily pushed onto Becca to progress that faster.
Through the chair, these are the things that we're trying to speed up with Becca around the timeframes for delay. There are other things like ground conditions that we'll need to work through, contractor availability. Also, the plant and equipment needs to be suitably tendered as well, given this is probably about $6 to $7 million worth of plant that we'll be purchasing from overseas to get here, and there's about 4 different suppliers internationally for it. So there is a process we need to work through, but it's how we can speed up this, and we're really putting the pressure on Becca to make sure we get that process done as quickly as possible, which is also why we're bringing in a dedicated project manager to help identify as many of the ways that we can speed this process up as possible.
Thank you, Chair. Wolfgang, the BTF, where does it feature in this? Will some of these proposed pieces of equipment go before it or after it? And then you introduced us to the word septage this time too. And that would kind of make me think that septage means BTF is not doing anything for us.
Through the chair, the BTF is upfront. It's the first component of the wastewater treatment system, obviously after the initial milliscreens. So milliscreens, then the BTF. After the BTF, it goes through a clarification process that's taking out all the solids. And then once the water is clear enough, it goes through a UV system, and then it goes up to outfall.
So septage is just overall?
No, septage. There's a septage facility there because we have regions that have septic tanks, and the septic tank pump outs get taken to the treatment plant and put into that system.
I see what you
Just to add to that, it also the water after dewatering from the sludge also goes back into the inlet of the system again. So anything that any wet material is recycled back through the plant to then go through the whole cycle again, not be taken away and dumped. So.
No further questions? If not, will someone move the recommendations on page 128? Thank you. Leroy, seconder. Can you put that to the table? All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary carried. Now we move to 141. Maori Compass update.
our pūrākau. So we have states of tapu to noa as far as water bodies go. We recognise the connection between Papatūānuku and Rangi. And for example, for Papatūānuku, that comes from Papatūānuku, goes back through Papatūānuku. So that's why we're always striving for land-based, through land treatment, rather than putting it through into waterways. So based on those time immemorial pūrākau, that's where the Māori compass is derived from. Yeah, so it's also built over or through the hard work and toil of many people, past and present, throughout a number of marae, many around the region here, but also around the country as well. So we're fortunate to learn and understand that a lot of things that we believe in here and we hold important and we want to protect are also ubiquitous to a lot of marae, a lot of iwi around the country. Locally, the Māori Compass was through this project. We have run a couple of case studies. There's one there, Paukahu, Taruhiru, and we also looked at the wastewater. So we've had a lot of time, and we're still fine-tuning it. Nothing's perfect, but we learn from each of those particular case studies on what works, what doesn't work, and how to make improvements as we go. The third point when I see that slide is the involvement of our rangatahi. Rangatahi today will be our rangatira of tomorrow. So children of today will be our leaders of tomorrow. So it's essential and totally compulsory that we involve schools as we go along this process. So again, schools are totally involved. We're trying to involve as many as possible. Just to, well, firstly, they're really fast learners. They switch on a lot quicker than most adults. So they're an easy audience. So, but essentially, it's also succession planning too. So if they get the concept, and they get the tool, they get the model, they get to understand what we're on about, then it bodes well for the future. I think that's my first talk. I'll hand you over to Wolfgang.
Thank you, Ian. So through this process of refining and improving, we've really looked at the mechanics and the functionality of the tool and how to implement it. And one of the things we had to grapple with was the scale of assessment and how to assess different scales. And there's a very simplistic diagram there of how it rolls up into an iwi. But any sort of project can have multiple whānau, multiple marae, multiple hapu, multiple iwi. And it's something we realized that we really need to be cognizant of scale in putting together the functionality and the processes in the tool. The bigger the area, basically the bigger the collective. So we call them collectives, the groups that we need to look at. In some cases, it might be one marae, which is going to be a collection of whānau. In other cases, it might be 5 iwi, in which case it's a whole lot bigger. And we just did some quick calculations and just assuming, taking one step back there, the engagement process is really critical here. As Ian alluded to, it's a really people-driven process. And the engagement process goes through an initial stage where you consult with key inputters, we call them. They're the key people within a collective that you want to talk to. And just assuming there are 5 in a marae, as you increase the number of marae and the number of iwi, the number of people just that you could directly or indirectly be representing or affecting increases dramatically. So if you're looking, for instance, at 5 iwi groups, each with 10 marae, you're looking at potentially up to 6,000 key inputters, key people within the marae that could have a say or influence the process. Likewise, if you look at the number of community members, just assuming 75 people per marae, you're looking at potentially affecting indirectly or directly up to 90,000 people because of the connections in the whakapapa. So we've integrated that sort of complexity into the tool to make sure that we can have fit for purpose processes, to make sure that we cater for all those different scenarios from Marai through to EV level. And I'll hand back to Ian.
Thank you, Wolf. Okay, so where can the tool be included? I think, firstly, why did the tool come about? I think would be another way of looking at it. So Dave Wilson and I had a conversation a couple of years ago because, as we know, WMC is a clause about improving the water quality and Māori of Tūranganui-a-Kiwa. So that conversation went something like, okay, we've got to do this. How do we measure that? And sort of playing a bit of poker, I said, yeah, we can do. We'll get back to you next week. So yeah, we went back and put those 12 attributes down, and they've stuck pretty true to where we're at to today. So on top of the wastewater WMC sort of relevance, there's also the Tairapiti Resource Management Plan, where I think it comes up, Modi comes up in the plan 81 times. Again, that's a reflection of since 1991 before, when our people really stressed the importance of the Modi of our waterways and protecting them, restoring them. So that's another aspect. Freshwater plan, Modi is a compulsory value in that plan as well. So there's a lot of opportunities, a lot of, I think in some ways this is about giving effect to what our people wanted to see those relationships, wanted to see the understanding, shared understanding, shared responsibility. Okay, so where can the tool be used? So regulatory planning processes, consent structure plans and catchment planning, and across a number of projects at varying scale. So we've done a lot of work to make sure it's robust, repeatable and reliable. And we've had it peer reviewed as well. And then we're back to the community programs, education activities, monitoring programs, and also setting priorities. So that was one of those earlier slides about involving the community as well.
So the only thing I'd add to it, Ian, is that it's you make the tool fit in with the project. So if it's contentious legal process, you know, you'll see the documents are really detailed. There's a lot of work to be done. There'll be an extensive process, whereas if it's a school wanting just to understand more about the stream, that level of input there and work will be much less. So it caters for the breadth of assessment. And going through the work, we also recognize that we need people with many skills to be able to run through a process, because it includes the Mātauranga Māori all the way through to Western science, chemistry, etc. input. And so, and project management, engagement, kind of all those different aspects are used in a process. You know, if you don't have a good project manager, you're not going to be able to do the work. If you aren't able to effectively engage, you may as well not even start. Tikanga, really important. And then, as I said, the technical aspects. You need to have the right mix of skills to be able to do it. And so, depending on the complexity of the project, you'll almost always have a team of people doing this work. Make sure it gets done to the right quality. There are the 3 different sections. Some sections, in each section, requires different inputs, different skills, and even within those sections, sometimes you might need 1 or 2 different people. So one of the key aspects that we've integrated into the consent now is the mechanics around state, and that's being able to assess change. And to be able to look at the effect of an activity on Māori. And so we've looked at the historical state, the present state, the future state after an activity, the desired state, and looking at cumulative effects. So we've added that functionality into it. just like you do with an AE, an assessment of environmental effects within the consent process, where you're predicting the changes due to an activity. We've now integrated that into the tool so we can get a quantification or an idea of what the change is due to an activity. We also allow us to then look back at the past and see where we've come from. And this feeds back to that one slide that Ian spoke about, which was about awareness and reflection. Also looking at what are we currently doing and where we come from, where we like to get to. So it's not just about consents and effects.
Okay, right, I'll just set the scene on a case study, the Tikaraka Wastewater Oxidation Ponds there. So we're going to explain how we look at Modi from its current state, which I think it's fairly fair, accurate to say munted, current state of Modi, and then we'll also look at a proposed activity. In this case, it's like, what if we were to put in a wetland, and how would the local marae people view that as a change in the current state? And then we also look at the after monitoring effects as well.
So what you end up with is, if you go through the process of doing the tool, of entering the data, which is a robust set of questions, it actually splits out at the end of the day a figure. And what we're able to do then is to quantify the change due to an activity. So this is the example of the Tikaraka oxidation pond upgrade, where we looked at adding a wetland treatment system onto the end of it. And the result is that in terms of the people component, we are looking at having a 27% improvement as comparing the future state to the current state. So you can't use exact figures, but the idea is that you're looking at direction of change and trajectories. Is 27.17 is you can't define it exactly as that. But what it is it's showing clearly that that project would definitely improve the mode in that situation. And then you've got other factors there, the land and the water and the environment, and those don't change as much because they are based on different factors. So what this allows us to do is look at what is driving the issues in the Maori in a specific location and project, and then use the tool to say, well, what do we now do to improve the Maori? This is a positive project, so you're saying a positive increase. If this was a different project, for example, a hydroelectric scheme or something on a river, without mitigation, you'd find a negative score in the end column. So there we've compared the present state to the state after the wetland, and then we have the change quantified on the right hand.
This is, you're doing a trial here. I know it's not going for a BTF like we have here, but could this be used as an example of what the quality of water would come out for irrigation in this particular system? Could this be used as an example for what's possible for the future, on a larger scale? I mean,
Very much so, yeah.
Yeah. So the water that could come out of the wetlands, you could be tested and say this is safe for irrigation. If it's an A quality or B quality for whatever irrigation use it would be used for.
It certainly has potential, as well as even the types of plants, local plants, whatever you use for wetlands.
Yeah.
How to propagate them. And,
Yeah.
and all that as well. So there's a lot of positive response.
Right. So that could help speed up the process of the bigger project as well. With information. Yeah. Right.
Thank you, Chair. I think just adding to that, Larry, I think there are a number of end users, and some will use the Modi compass and some won't. So it won't be as broad as what you perceive its use, but it certainly will be effective, and it will be it's more by acceptance by groups rather than council using it as a tool to police people. The information part will build up the acceptance, we believe, no trouble, and more groups will want to use it. I think that's just a little difference about it. It's not something we're going to give the council to use as a big stick. going forward. Thank you.
Let's get that acceptance at the grassroots, isn't it, and coming through, so using it as an example, what's possible. It's,
We all good?
If I may, just through the chair, just add to that, Maori Compass is a tool to assess Maori of water. It's not the full bullet for everything. There are other tools out there, but this is one tool that we've developed now, and that has application.
Thank you. My question is actually around the usage of this in terms of what triggers or allows us to use this in our council decision-making process. For example, earlier you mentioned assessments of environmental effect, but that's at resource consent stage, right? So council's already made a decision whether they support that or don't support it, and they haven't had that robust information around the assessment of environmental effect. And that's why, we make decisions from staff information pre that assessment, pre-resource consent stage. So this seems like a great tool for me when we're in our decision-making process at council level. For example, if we were talking about the decision of Palm Forest and the security of our drinking water catchment, and it only came up through conversation that there was freshwater nurseries, fish nurseries in that catchment that we could be protecting. This seems like the perfect tool to give us an assessment of the environmental effects, positive and negative, to our decisions in that environment. So when can we trigger the use of this tool? Can it be for council purposes so that we make better decisions on what projects we back? Or is it going to be further down the line and post decision making?
If I may respond to that, there are provisions that we have to look at Maori in the various plans which Ian referred to. And I guess now it's about looking at how do we integrate Maori into decision making. This is probably a question larger than the tool. It's about integration of Maori into decision making, and this is just one tool that could be used for that.
I guess my point is that we, as council, have a responsibility as decision makers to consider environmental, social, cultural impact, as well as economic. And at the moment, we don't have robust tools for any of those, except for really economic impact, because we all have a perception of what value is. But we don't have anything measurable for those others. This seems like a tool that takes us in that right direction to having a measurable tool that we can use alongside our decision making and help us support good decisions on an environmental basis and in part on a cultural basis as well, albeit in a narrow spectrum related to quality of water. But it seems like a tool that would be very beneficial to councillors in supporting projects and decision making, more so than just when we get to resource consent stage.
It's going to be difficult, rather than us just talking around the Maori Compass. I want you, Ian, to give us an example of how tikanga is applied to the Maori Compass across the board. How do you, whether it's wastewater, whether it's fresh water, whether it's in normal business for council.
Thank you, Ian. Yes, Chair. You'll notice with the Maori Compass is the levels of engagement. And so the tikanga rests with the people who participate. And that's the magic of the tool. You can be of any description and get to a certain point by using the following parts of that compass. And the compass is a mix of Western and Mātauranga science as well. So,
It'll be difficult, but in terms of tikanga, we all understand how it applies to us personally and how we normally engage in it. I just want a specific example in terms of our wastewater, in terms of the Maori compass.
I think the Māori compass allows people to get right down to the nth degree in how did it affect your kai and what do we need to do to get back to that state. So it's the tikanga around how you then address that. But one of the mysteries of the Māori is, do we keep it as a, and we're questioned on this with the development of Māori compass, why go to that spot and give GDC an out. So yes, our way of looking at it is that the Māori is something you work so that it's better explained for our generations that's coming on, rather than trapping the Māori in a handful of elite people and constantly referring to them for their direction on everything. Now, people are getting disenfranchised with an elite group making decisions on their behalf. And this tool is one of its biggest pluses, that it can go to anybody and they can all participate within a framework and feel like that they've helped strengthen their own tikanga.
Any further questions?
Through the chair, as I understand it, it is a tool to measure Māori. The tikanga, in terms of what is right and what is wrong, will always be determined by the iwi or hapa or whānau. So when you've got a tool that's measuring Māori, it's high or low or a mixture of both, it then enables a conversation with people to say, well, it's not right. And according to tikanga, we need a different pathway. So I think that's how you apply the measurement of the tool. It is while it's quite holistic, it's a tool in itself, but it's not intended to be tikanga as well.
I'm getting the arguments out of there on that. But are there any more questions of our two experts over here? Leroy.
Yeah, I agree. It's a pretty elusive thing to try and measure, in all honesty. I think, and I'm not going to confess to be an expert on the Māori compass either, but I think what it does give is the opportunity for us to consider other perspectives and other points of view, whereas it's very easy with a subject like wastewater to get a train where that's where your view is. And I think perhaps what this offers us is an opportunity for everyone to consider other perspectives and other considerations around what's acceptable to all of us. Yeah, and so that's what I see the value of this tool is. It's more of a perspective and opportunity to consider what's in front of us, rather than a tool where you pull out your slide, your ruler, and measure, yep, we're making the mark or not. Part of a broader and conversation, really.
Just a comment. I mean, we hear about riverways being swimmable and or not, but this actually is more in depth. From what I'm reading at the moment, it's obviously if the fish life in there are eatable, well then it's okay. If they're not, well then it's not. The swimmable perception that we have is really loose. So this kind of tightens it up a little bit more and makes it more specific to these waterways. If you can get an eel that is edible, or any other fish life that is edible, well, we're heading in the right direction, because unfortunately we've changed so many of our waterways that they're not in that situation anymore.
Nothing further? Someone move the recommendations on page 141. Thank you. Second, I put to the table. All those in favour?
Aye.
It brings us to the end of the meeting, but before we ask Penny to close it, or ask Penny to close it with the karakia, I just want to acknowledge all, this is the end of this term, and this is the final Wastewater Management Committee meeting. Personally, I think we've come a long way since the last election. I just want to acknowledge all those around the table, especially our iwi partners, our staff, David, Wolf, and Ian as our how would one describe you, Ian? Our consultant, and our staff that serve us, and our media over there, who I think have given us a fair hearing and not been too critical. All in all, it's been pretty progressive. I hope when the new council is formed, that there's a bit of consistency around this table. I know with iwi there probably will be. I just want to acknowledge too, having read this report twice, fellas taking the issue back to the marae and going to all those marae and having hui. I know how difficult that would have been, but the outcome has been good if I've read the report correctly. Aside from that, rather than waffle on, I'll ask Penny to close our meeting with karakia. Thank you. Yeah.
So there's sort of something I was going to approach. So with the new committee coming in, what are staff preparing for that meeting? Secondly, when's our next monitoring reports due?
So through the chair, with all of the committee structures, that's up to the new council and the new mayor. The WMC, of course, was standing with the committee, so it will be here. The membership, all of the new committees go through an induction process, and there'll be one specific to the members that will be sitting on this committee to talk through the history, what we've been through, what we have done at Bank Street, and then the work that we have coming forward in the next 3 years in particular. So that will be part of that induction. The report will be coming through when the annual reports come through as part of our financial end of year activity reports, which are still being finalised, and then we'll have the monitoring report that will come through for the year as well. Likely to be hitting probably in the first meeting after the election, so November, December. The schedule will have to be approved by the new council, which will be sitting at its first proper meeting in October, and then they will confirm, 7th of November, and then they will confirm the timeframes, but we'll be in touch with the members as soon as we know what that timetable looks like.
I'm not sure if we would have any changes as well. Perhaps some consideration is made.
Thank you, Chair. Nā whakamoemiti ki te atua, kia mau tonu, kia runga, kia tātou katoa, kia whai o te atua, te aroa o te karaiti, te whiwhi, nā tongatanga i te wairu tapu, ake, ame. Amen.
3 years still, I stayed in the ground LA. We've come a long way, but there's still that space. Yeah. Yeah, so in terms of the induction process, you almost want this current committee, whether they're on council or not, to sit around and talk to the